Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webcast with Pandora today. My name is Zina Pagan, and I am ARF's marketing manager, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we begin about learning about hacking the commuter code, I will go over a few housekeeping items. The audio will be streamed. This means that you will be able to hear us through your computer speakers. However, if you prefer to use a teleconference option, I will post the information on the chat box. The chat box can be found towards the right of your screen. Should you have any questions during the session, please send these to me using the same chat box. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. The session will be recorded. If you would like to view the recorded event, it will be available on demand within 2 weeks from today. For the best webcast experience, please keep yourself muted and your computer web camera turned off. If at any time I do see that I do hear any ambient noise, I will mute everybody. If you're following us on social media, please use hashtag ARF Webcast. That's ARF Webcast. If you're interested in hosting a webcast of your own, please contact Daniel Bulgren at dbulgren@thearf.org or myself at zina@thearf.org. The ARF does have a few events that are coming up. If you're in the Cincinnati area on May 10th, please join us to explore the new shopper paradigms. And if you're in the Chicago area on May 12th, please join us to learn about how advertising works in the cross-platform world. If you're planning to attend audience measurement, this is a reminder that the discounted hotel rate will end next week. So please book your hotel and also register for the event. The conference will be held in June here in New York City. And this year we have Sarah Hofstetter from 360i and Kathleen Hall from Microsoft as our keynotes. If you're interested in any one of these events or other ARF programs, please let me know and I'll be happy to direct you to the correct party. And without further delay, I present to you Pandora's Jane Collins, who is the Senior Director of Consumer Insights, and Ron Rodrigues, Senior Manager of Marketing Research at Pandora.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Zina, and good afternoon and morning to everybody on the call. We're here to share about 15 minutes worth of findings with ARF members. The automobile is fertile territory for anybody who does audio, and we believe that the technology-driven audio renaissance is changing the way that people use media in the car, the way that they have changed outside of the car. And this morning, for example, as millions of Americans just like you drove themselves to work, many of them did something on average of 22 times while they were behind the wheel. And as these drivers head home this afternoon, they'll repeat this action another 22 times. So what is that repetitive action? Is it taking a sip of coffee or checking their phone? I hope not. But I'll share the answer with you in a moment. Americans have a complicated relationship with cars. On one hand, we celebrate the freedom that they bring, but on the other hand, we don't particularly look forward to our daily drives. The average commuter spends about an hour on the road each day getting to and from work, and our time stuck in traffic increases with each year. But one of the ways we've made our commutes more enjoyable is with audio. Did you know that a third of all audio, 87 minutes per day, is consumed in the car? And even with advanced infotainment systems that bring us all kinds of information and entertainment to the dashboard, audio is still king of the car. And this enduring relationship between drivers and audio has paved the way for quality time for marketers. They're reaching a captive audience, thirsting for great content. They're not competing with other media platforms. Yes?
I'm sorry, I don't see your slides.
See here. How about now?
I do now. Thank you.
Okay, there you go. These have been static slides so far, so no big loss. Anyway, I was talking about the enduring relationship between drivers and audio, which has paved the way for quality time for marketers, and that's because marketers are reaching a captive audience, and they're not competing with other media platforms. And drivers are literally closer to many purchase decisions. And much like what's happened with mobile technology outside the car, automobiles have become media hubs unto themselves. And as a result, drivers don't have more options beyond traditional audio. And whether it's through smartphones or connected dashboards, drivers have come to expect the same kind of personalized audio behind the wheel that they get on their mobile devices these days. Today's drivers have a lot more audio choices to choose from, including streaming radio and podcasts, satellite radio, and audio books. New content and device choices have raised many questions about the impact on listeners, their behaviors, and ultimately on marketers. What do drivers listen to, and what devices do they use? How does media technology affect what drivers listen to? And how do drivers respond to commercials or music that they don't like? The answers can help marketers understand how consumers behave in one of the most important audio listening environments. So to take us through the study and explain how it was conducted, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Jane Collins.
All right. So to answer these questions, Edison Research, a respected organization that's been studying digital media trends for nearly 2 decades, recently conducted a groundbreaking study of in-car audio behaviors among commuters. The study included intensive observations of how real drivers used audio in their vehicles as they commuted to and from work. And here's how they did it. Edison outfitted 101 cars around the U.S. with GoPro cameras, which captured the driver's use of the dashboard audio controls during their travels to and from work. The study was supplemented with an online questionnaire involving 1,100 commuters, randomly selected and weighted to the U.S. general online population. To get the most granular results, Edison recruited solo drivers whose commutes are at least 20 minutes in each direction, and the average one-way commute time for these drivers was about a half an hour. Let's meet some of the commuters who participated in the study. We'll look at some of the video that was captured from the cameras right now. Hopefully, the video will work. Let's go video.
Oh, my baby, clean out of sight. Don't you know that she is? She's some kind of wonderful.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
My name is Matt Lott.
Hi, my name is Kelly.
I'm Derek.
My name is Kim.
Hi, I'm Hank. I drive a 2004 Acura TSX.
Okay.
In my mind.
Want or did start yourself radio station?
It ain't complicated. Normally in the morning when I get in, I listen to the radio until I drop her off, and then I turn on a podcast.
From News Center 5 Eye Opener in every newscast, connecting you to the...
Burt Reynolds is the biggest movie star.
8 million.
On some of these music stations, they have 5 or 7 minutes of commercials.
With kid-sized cinnamon rolls and cream.
I've been in the game for 10 years making rap tunes.
No.
What did you tell them? Video killed the radio star. Video killed the radio star. Just came and broke your heart.
Okay, so after these commuters drove with the cameras, they returned them to Edison, which analyzed each driver's full commute and recorded every action that they took with the audio controls, such as changing stations or skipping songs. Edison ended up analyzing nearly 3,000 total minutes of video, observing nearly 1,800 driver actions with the audio controls. So let's look at the answer to the first question. What are the commuters listening to? There's a lot of diversity here. The dashboard has lots to offer. It's not surprising to see that AM/FM has been used by 90% of drivers, knowing that it's been in cars for more than 80 years. However, the commuters in this study also reported that they use, on average, 3 different audio choices from this list. Edison then drilled down and asked drivers the so-called desert island question. If they only had one audio choice in the car, which one would they choose? This bar reflects everyone's answers. It's divided into 3 sections: AM/FM radio, streaming audio, and kind of the everything else category, which includes CDs, satellite radio, podcasts, and other forms of audio not addressable by marketers or not independently measured. Interestingly, if you recall the previous slide, while 90% of the drivers say they had listened to AM/FM in the car ever, less than half would choose it if they only had one choice. Edison also noticed a distinct difference in the audio choices based on the age of the car. This next bar shows the audio preferences among commuters who drove 2006 model year cars or older. Now, these are cars that are at least 10 years old. They are the least likely to have connected car technologies, and the drivers chose more AM/FM radio and less of everything else compared to the average. At the other end of the spectrum, there are the commuters who have the newest cars, those who drive 2012 model year or newer. These cars are most likely to have connected dashboards, and nearly all of them have an AUX jack, a USB port, or Bluetooth so that drivers can connect their smartphones. And you can see a dramatic difference in usage compared to those who drive older cars. These drivers are far more likely to listen to streaming and other options and far less likely to listen to AM/FM. Let's look at one last group. This is among drivers, regardless of the age of their car, who have ever listened to streaming internet radio in their cars. When given the choice of just one audio choice, 28% chose streaming, even beating out AM/FM. Connected car technologies are among the most sought-after features in cars. 59% of the commuters in this study who plan to buy a car in the next year have rated a connected car as very important to their purchase. As more new connected cars hit the road and as more drivers experience personalized streaming audio, options such as Pandora become a seamless choice. We have long believed that, thanks to the short reach to the dashboard, drivers switch their audio choices more frequently in the car than they would in other locations. Switching is defined as changing a station, skipping a song, or going from one platform to another, such as from AM/FM to Pandora or Sirius XM. Edison dug into this topic and probed the panel about their switching. Their researchers also used GoPro analysis that I spoke about earlier. As you have seen, AM/FM is still popular in the car, but its popularity declines in cars with advanced dashboard technologies. We wanted to know the specific reasons that cause drivers to switch when listening to AM/FM. Commuters identified two main reasons for switching: avoiding commercials and finding a better song. You heard it from the driver in the video. He expects radio to play 5 to 7 minutes of commercials, and punching away to find music has become a learned behavior. And speaking of music, how often do you punch through AM/FM dials looking for just the right song and come up empty-handed? We have become accustomed to and expect personalized experiences, just like our Coke cans or our favorite TV shows, and especially our music. We no longer have to settle for repetitive, non-personalized playlists in the car. But let's go back to commercials for just a minute. Clearly, lawn commercial pods on AM/FM radio are not a great listener experience, and drivers have learned to avoid them with the push of a button. Just check out the two groups of listeners on the left side of this chart. 23% of the panel say they tune away immediately after a commercial comes on, while another 25% will tune out at some point during the first commercial. That means that nearly half of them switch before the first commercial is done airing. And then that third group, the 23% at the top right of this chart, will have switched away during one of the subsequent commercials. The result is that an amazing 71% of drivers don't listen to the full pod. They will have switched away during one of the commercials in the pod. Almost a quarter of AM/FM switches don't even go to another AM/FM station. They go to a different listening platform like Pandora or Sirius XM. So what happens when you combine impersonal and repetitive music playlists with an endless run of commercials? The answer to this question also answers the little quiz that Ron gave you at the beginning of the webinar. What's the action that drivers do 22 times every commute? And the answer is, it's the number of times during each direction of their daily commute that they switch while listening to AM/FM radio. I'll repeat that. Commuters switch 22 times on average in each commute direction when they are listening to AM/FM radio. And here's a critical comparison between switching with AM/FM radio and switching while listening to other audio choices in the car. Drivers switch less than half as often when they're listening to something other than AM/FM radio, just 9 times per commute. It goes to prove that personalized audio in a low-clutter environment results in superior engagement. More importantly, Pandora listeners who switch, such as skipping a song or changing from one Pandora station to another, will still be served the targeted ads that were intended for them. And now we're going to go back to Ron for a few closing comments.
Thank you, Jane. Good job. When it comes to media, audio remains the king of the car, but drivers who listen to AM/FM radio, as Jane just pointed out, switch 22 times on average in each commute direction, lasting approximately a half hour. They switch less than half as often when listening to other audio sources. And this is new evidence that personalized audio in a premium environment is more effective for marketers looking to engage with commuters. Nearly half of in-car AM/FM listeners don't make it to the second commercial in a pod. That means that for the second commercial in the pod, it's a coin flip as to whether your spot was heard. And it only gets worse after that. 71% of drivers will have tuned away before the spot cluster is over. And audio commercials can't be effective if they're not being heard. 40% of commuters connect their smartphones to their dashboards on a regular basis. If you add this to the growing percentage of connected cars hitting the road, the trend toward personalized audio in the car is only going to accelerate going forward. And since we started this webinar, just 22 minutes ago, more than 1,000 new cars were sold in the United States. And the majority of those cars are equipped with connected dashboards, providing new and more engaging audio choices for listeners. And as more of these cars hit the road, marketers will access engaged listeners who are much less likely to switch away from advertising. In today's always-on, always-connected world, it's hard enough to capture attention without worrying whether your ad was being heard. Imagine a world where connected dashboards and personalized content are no longer the exception, but they are the rule. As marketers, it's crucial to understand the implications of Edison's findings and find ways to adjust your strategies to consumers' evolving in-car behaviors. And with that, Zena, I think that we can turn it back to you and take questions, right?
Yes. All right. So just to remind everybody, if you have a question and you would like to send it along, please access your chat box, which is on the right hand of the screen. It should be the second icon from the top. Send your questions there, and I'll read them out for both Ron and Jane. So for the first question, are there any demographic cuts available for this study? Did you see any differences by age, gender, or ethnicity?
I'll grab that. There are several demographic cuts available from the quant portion of the study. As we went through a little bit earlier in the methodology page, there were over 1,100 online surveys conducted, and for that portion of the study, there's any demographic cut one could possibly want, from older adults to younger adults, to by gender, ethnicities. All of that is available to be broken out by Edison. The other portion of the study, which included the 101 GoPro cameras that were analyzed for all the audio and video, is really too small of a sample to do demographic cuts. However, I will say that as researchers, when we saw the results, we were delighted to see that both the GoPro video information and the 1,100 survey information were directionally similar. So you always hope for that kind of a match when you do a qual-quant survey, and that's what happened here.
Thank you. Next question. Did the study cover how many people are accessing mobile inside the car? Any additional insights about smartphone mobile access for commuters?
Yeah, there were many questions that dealt with and went into sort of a deeper dive than what was shown in this particular presentation on mobile access, overall mobile access, how commuters are accessing, what percentage is going through Bluetooth, what percentage is using USB ports. That's actually was pretty interesting. As more and more cars become smart cars and connected cars, plugging into a USB port is become sort of a ubiquitous behavior as well. So yes, there's a lot of mobile information in this study that Edison could provide.
Next question. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the data from the GoPro, from the 101 GoPro videos was combined with the 1,100 online surveys? Did the results mirror each other?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the demos, they did mirror each other. In particular, the switching behavior, which was observed in the videos, was quantified and matched almost literally entirely to the results of the online survey in terms of how often people switch, at what point do they switch, where do they go when they switch. So again, very, very similar directionally between the GoPro video information and the online survey information.
I think there was the first part of the question was about whether they were combined or not, and they weren't combined in the results, right?
We didn't combine the results. It made more sense to analyze each independently and see where there were directional similarities. And for most of the key points, in fact, for all of the key points that we covered in this particular webinar, they all matched. They were all similar. In some cases, they were literally identical percentage-wise.
Okay, next question. Was Canon involved in the study at all? And how did you select your demographic for those that were featured on the video?
I'm sorry, we didn't hear the first. Was who involved?
Was the GoPro with Canon, were they involved in the study at all?
GoPro?
No,
they were not involved. I don't think that. I think that Edison just bought those GoPros off the shelf at a Best Buy.
That's exactly what they told us.
Yeah.
They thought that the GoPro brand would be the best way because it was easier to mount, so that it would be mounted pointing what they referred to as the center stack or the dashboard. So GoPro was selected as the brand to use for the study, but they had nothing to do with the study. They just they were what Edison decided would be the best thing to use. And as you could see from the video, people didn't have too much trouble, getting it set up.
And then the second part was how were people selected for the video?
To be representative geographically of a total U.S., to be not all rural or all urban, but evenly dispersed against urban, rural, suburban. Again, we know 101 is an enormous sample. That's why this was combined by Edison to be a qual-quant with the 1,000 plus online surveys. But in terms of selecting them, it was random, but it was as representative as 101 individuals could be of a total U.S. So in other words, it wasn't all from New York, it wasn't all from L.A., it was around the country. And they also had to meet those criteria that we both talked about earlier in the study, which is they had to be commuters, they had to have a commute alone, the commute had to be at least a certain, what was it, Ron? How long?
20 minutes.
20 minutes each way. So those were criteria as well for being in the study.
Next question. Is this study available in further detail online anywhere, or is it confidential?
Edison syndicates the study, so they're the ones that have control over the study. We, of course, did this study with our perspective and are happy to share that out with you. The actual original study belongs to Edison, and they are syndicating it.
So, for example, and I'm just to piggyback on that, I mean, what you saw in this webinar, obviously we have time constraints. It's sort of just the tip of the iceberg. There's tons more information in the Edison version that, goes into personas and, they've developed 3 different personas of the kinds of commuters and their audio behaviors and who switches more often and what are their age groups. And I mean, there's just a wealth of information that goes way deeper into mobile activities in the car. So yeah, that is all available through Edison, as a syndicated study. But as Ron said, and you see our emails, you can reach out to Ron to get to get this particular webinar. Just reach out to Ron.
Was there a study of what share of total listening was to each platform?
Yeah.
Well, the way that the questions were worded, they didn't get into that kind of detail in the quant portion of the study. In other words, we didn't ask how many minutes you listen to AM/FM and how many minutes you listen to other forms of media. They were able to get that out of the GoPro study, but of course, since that was a smaller set of respondents, I don't know if Edison reported that out or not, and I'm not even sure if we were that particularly interested in that aspect of it.
But to answer the question a little bit deeper on the quant side with the online survey, they did actually ask the question, I want to say like 4 different ways. So have you ever listened to, and then there were 9 different platforms, including AM, FM, streaming, Sirius XM, podcasts, et cetera, and then it was, what do you listen to this morning on the way in? What do you listen to on the way home, for example, because these are all commuters. And then, of course, you saw in this study the question on if you only had one choice, the classic desert island question, that was asked as well. So there were many ways of getting at platform usage, but engagement, like how many minutes, that wasn't one of them.
Didn't the study say that most of the switches happened when music was playing, not commercials?
That was slightly below commercials. Commercials was the number 1 choice for why people switch, and then right below that, and that was based on the videos, was music. Looking for that next perfect song was it's an important reason. I don't like the song that's playing, I'm going to switch. Statistically, if you go back to that slide, and again, any of you are welcome to ask us, we'll provide this entire entire webinar for you. It's almost a statistical tie, but actually commercials were observed in the videos to be slightly ahead of next song for why people switched.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, we're not trying to infer that commercials were the only reason that people switch.
Right.
Clearly, it was commercials and music.
Next question, and it's the final question, so if anybody else has any questions, it's your time to submit them. Were the 101 GoPro participants not included on the online survey?
No, they were separate from the online respondents.
Okay, and now the last question. Are there any future studies that Pandora is trying to conduct or new research that they aim to uncover?
Sure. I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to discuss them, but they're one of the things that we do as an organization is try to dive into listener behaviors. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. We're even talking about, maybe if Edison decides to do this again next year, we'll certainly be, supporting them and wanting to take a look. But we've got other stuff in the pipeline as well. So see you next year, hopefully.
Okay. By the way, as Jane said, you could reach out to either of us at our email addresses that are on the screen. If you have any feedback or additional questions or requests for any backup, and both of our Twitter handles are down there as well, so feel free to follow us.
Jane and Ron, do you guys have any last items to discuss for the presentation just before we log off?
I just thank everybody for coming. This is really exciting information for us. We hope it's interesting for you as well. And as Ron said, reach out to us if you have additional questions. I'm the type of person that always thinks of a question the second the whole thing is over. If you're one of those people too, don't hesitate to email us.
Right, exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for presenting your study with us today and for spending the time with us today. Everybody else, thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your questions, and I do hope to see everybody at the next webcast. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.